They call Highway 50 through Kansas the loneliest road in America. 400 miles of nothing but wheat fields, abandoned farmhouses, and grain silos that stand like tombstones marking the death of small-town America. I patrolled that stretch for 22 years, and I can tell you, lonely doesn't begin to describe it. Especially after you start hearing the signals. If you're watching this from Kansas, or anywhere in the Midwest, you know about the grain silos. Those massive concrete towers that dot the landscape every few miles, most of them abandoned since the farm crisis of the 80s. But here's what you don't know. Some of them are still transmitting. Not grain prices or weather reports. Something else. Emergency signals from 1978. From people who died in an F5 tornado. From people who are somehow still calling for help, 45 years later. Drop a comment if you've ever driven through Kansas at night. Ever had your radio pick up strange signals? Ever heard voices that shouldn't exist anymore? Because what I'm about to tell you isn't unique. It's been happening since 1978. We just don't talk about it. My name is Daniel Dan Kowalski. I was a Kansas State Trooper from 1998 to 2020, and this is why I'll never look at a grain silo the same way again. You learn to respect the weather in Kansas. It's not just background noise like in other states. It's an active participant in your life. Sometimes benevolent, often hostile, always watching. By late May 2019, I'd been patrolling Highway 50 for over 20 years, and I could read the sky like most people read road signs. That particular Memorial Day weekend, the sky was speaking in tongues I'd never heard before. The morning had started with that sick yellow-green tinge that makes every Kansan check their storm cellars. By afternoon, the air was so thick with humidity you could practically swim through it. The Weather Service had issued tornado watches for half the state, but that was normal for late May. What wasn't normal was the complete radio silence. I don't mean the official channels were quiet. Those were buzzing with weather updates and position reports. I mean the AM radio in my cruiser, the one I kept tuned to the local farm report out of habit, had gone completely dead. Not static, not interference, just absolute silence, like the signal had been swallowed whole. I was about 50 miles west of Hutchinson, near a cluster of abandoned grain silos that had been empty since a co-op went bankrupt in 2008, when the first transmission came through. It started as a whisper, so faint I thought I was imagining it. Then it got clearer, resolving into a man's voice, calm but urgent. "This is Greensburg Emergency Services. We have multiple casualties at the Garrison elevator. The silo has collapsed. We need immediate assistance. Please respond." I grabbed my radio to reply before I remembered. I was listening to AM radio, not my official channels. This was a broadcast, not a two-way communication, and there was something else wrong with it. Greensburg had been rebuilt after the 2007 tornado, but the Garrison elevator hadn't existed since 1978. It had been destroyed in an F5 tornado that killed 17 people. I pulled over and checked my equipment. The AM radio showed I was tuned to 1240, a frequency that had been dead air for years. But the transmission continued. "We have approximately 40 people sheltering in the main silo. The tornado has passed, but the structure is compromised. We can hear the metal groaning. Please, anyone receiving this, we need help at the Garrison elevator, Highway 50, 3 miles east of Greensburg." My blood went cold. I knew this story. Every long-time Kansas cop did. May 29th, 1978. An F5 tornado, a quarter-mile wide, had torn through Greensburg just as the evening shift was ending at the Garrison elevator. 43 workers had taken shelter in what they thought was the safest place, the main grain silo. But the tornado had compromised the structure, and it had collapsed 12 hours later, crushing everyone inside. The rescue workers had heard them on the radio for hours, calling for help, describing their deteriorating situation, until the final transmission at 6:47 a.m. on May 30th when the silo finally gave way. But that was 41 years ago. The garrison elevator had been demolished. The land was now a wheat field. There was nothing there but a small memorial marker I'd passed 1,000 times. I switched to my official radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 314. I'm getting some unusual interference on civilian bands out near mile marker 298. Can you confirm any emergency transmissions in the area?" "Negative, 314, came the reply from Sharon, our night dispatcher. "All quiet on emergency channels. What kind of interference?" How could I explain that I was hearing 40-year-old ghost transmissions? "Just some old recordings, probably atmospheric skip or something. I'll keep monitoring." But I knew atmospheric skip didn't work like that. It could bounce current signals from far away, not resurrect broadcasts from 1978. The transmission on the AM radio continued, and now there were more voices. I could hear people in the background, crying, praying, someone trying to keep children calm. A woman's voice came on. "This is Nancy Garrett. I'm trapped in the garrison elevator with 42 other people. If anyone can hear this, please tell my husband Robert that I love him. Tell my children, Sarah, she's 8, and Michael, he's 5. Tell them Mommy loves them and to be good for Daddy." I knew that name. Nancy Garrett's memorial stone was in the Greensburg Cemetery. She'd left behind a husband and 2 young children. Sarah Garrett Phillips now lived in Wichita, was a grandmother herself. Michael had died in Afghanistan in 2003. I should have driven away, should have reported equipment malfunction and headed back to the station. But something made me stay, made me listen. The voices on the radio were getting clearer, more desperate. "The walls are buckling. We can see daylight through cracks that weren't there an hour ago. The grain is shifting. It sounds like an avalanche waiting to happen. Please, God, someone has to hear us." Then, cutting through all the other voices, came one that made me slam on the brakes so hard I nearly went off the road. It was a child's voice. Couldn't have been more than 10 years old. "Trooper? Trooper, can you hear me? I can see your car from up here. The blue lights. You're right outside. Please, we're up here. We're in the silo. Don't leave us." I looked around. I was alone on Highway 50, parked on the shoulder. There was no silo here anymore, just endless wheat fields. But the child's voice continued. "You're looking right at us. Why won't you help, please, Trooper? My name is Billy Watson. My dad works here. We were visiting when the storm came. Please don't drive away. Billy Watson." I'd seen that name on the memorial. William Billy Watson, Jr., age 9, died May 30th, 1978. Visiting his father at work. Both killed when the silo collapsed. My hands were shaking as I picked up my personal cell phone and called Tom Martinez, a fellow trooper who'd worked this stretch even longer than I had. "Tom, it's Dan. You ever hear anything weird on the radio near the old garrison elevator site?" There was a long pause. "Dan, it's 11 p.m. What's going on?" "Just answer the question. Have you ever heard transmissions?" Another pause, longer this time. "Meet me at the Greensburg Diner." Don't talk about this on official channels. The diner was one of the few buildings that had been rebuilt exactly as it was before the 2007 tornado, a deliberate piece of nostalgia in a town that had been forced to reinvent itself. Tom was already there when I arrived, sitting in a back booth, nursing a coffee that looked like it had gone cold hours ago. "So you heard them," he said, without preamble. "You knew about this?" Every trooper who's worked Highway 50 long enough knows about it. Usually happens around the anniversary, late May into June. Sometimes during particularly bad storms. But this year, he shook his head. This year, it's been getting stronger, more frequent. How is it possible? Tom pulled out a folder he'd been sitting on. Inside were incident reports, newspaper clippings, and what looked like transcripts. Best we can figure, it has something to do with the tornado itself. That 1978 storm was unprecedented. Winds over 300 miles per hour. Pressure drops that shouldn't be possible. Some of the scientists who studied it afterward said it did something to the electromagnetic field in the area. You're telling me a tornado created a time loop? I'm telling you that 43 people died in a grain silo. And sometimes, on certain nights, we can still hear their final hours. But Dan, that's not the weird part. That's not the weird part? Tom pulled out a transcript dated from 2015. This is from Trooper Michelle Sanders. She heard the transmissions, just like you, but she decided to respond. She radioed back on the same frequency, told them help was coming, tried to comfort them. And the transmissions changed. They started thanking her, saying they could see the rescue vehicles arriving. They described things that weren't in the 1978 reports. New details. Interactive responses to her specific questions. That's impossible. Is it? You just had Billy Watson tell you he could see your patrol car. In 1978, patrol cars didn't have LED light bars like yours. They had the old rotating beacons. The warm night. You're saying they can see us? In the present, I'm saying something's happening at that site that nobody understands. The transmissions aren't just echoes from 1978. They're active, responsive, and they're getting stronger. Tom pulled out another document. This one more recent. 3 weeks ago, a trucker reported his CB radio picking up emergency calls from the Garrison elevator. Gave a full description of the scene inside the silo, details that matched the 1978 incident perfectly, except for one thing. He said there were 44 people inside, not 43. Maybe he miscounted. Or maybe someone new got added. Dan, I've been tracking this for 15 years. Every few years, someone driving that stretch of Highway 50 goes missing. Their car is found abandoned near the old Garrison site. No sign of them. And shortly after, the transmissions mention one more person in the silo. You're saying people are being pulled back in time. I'm saying something at that site is still active, still dangerous, and the department knows about it. He pulled out one more document, marked with official Kansas Highway Patrol letterhead, but stamped classified in red. Directive 78-05, issued June 1st, 1978. Just 2 days after the silo collapse. All units are to avoid the Garrison elevator site between the hours of 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. Any emergency calls from that location during those hours are to be logged but not responded to. Any officer experiencing unusual radio phenomena is to report it through special channels, not standard dispatch. They've known for 40 years. They've been managing it for 40 years, containing it. But Dan, like I said, something's changing. The transmissions are lasting longer, starting earlier, bleeding into normal radio frequencies. Last week, a family driving through picked it up on their car stereo. Traumatized their kids hearing people calling for help, describing their final moments. I thought about Billy Watson's voice, so clear, so present. What do you think is really happening? Tom was quiet for a long moment. I think that tornado did something more than just destroy buildings. I think it tore something, created a crack in time, space, whatever you want to call it. And those 43 people, they're stuck in that crack. Not dead, not alive, just trapped. Experiencing their final 12 hours over and over again. But if they can see us, interact with us, then maybe they're not just reliving it. Maybe they're still experiencing it. Fresh. Every time. 40 years of dying slowly in a collapsing grain silo, calling for help that never comes. We sat in silence, the weight of that thought settling over us like dust from a collapsed building. Outside, the Kansas night stretched endless and dark, punctuated by the distant lights of grain silos that stood like sentinels across the prairie, each one a potential tomb, a potential crack in reality, a potential prison for souls caught between moments. My phone buzzed. A text from dispatch. Unit 314. Are you still monitoring that interference? We're getting multiple reports of emergency broadcasts from the garrison area. Tom looked at me. It's 2:15 a.m. The window is open. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I stood up, dropped money on the table for coffee I hadn't touched. I'm going back. Someone needs to document this properly. Someone needs to figure out what's really happening. Dan, don't! But I was already heading for the door, because I could still hear Billy Watson's voice in my head, asking why I wouldn't help. Because 43 people had been calling for help for 40 years, and everyone had just driven past. Because sometimes being a cop means protecting people even when they're beyond protection, serving even when service seems impossible. The drive back to the garrison site took 20 minutes. As I got closer, all of my radios began picking up the signals. Multiple voices now, overlapping, desperate. The structural integrity is failing. We can hear rescue vehicles, thank God. Please tell our families. The grain is moving. Everyone get to the walls. And underneath it all, Billy Watson. The trooper came back. I told you he'd come back. He's going to save us. I parked exactly where I'd been before, the wheat field that had once been the garrison elevator stretching out beside the highway. In the darkness, I could swear I saw lights where no lights should be. The outline of a massive grain silo, translucent, flickering like a bad television signal. I picked up my radio, tuned it to AM 1240, and did what no one had done in 41 years. I responded, "This is Kansas State Trooper Daniel Kowalski. I hear you, Garrison Elevator. I'm here. Tell me what you need." The moment I responded to the transmission, everything changed. The static on my radio cleared instantly, replaced by a chorus of voices so clear they could have been sitting in my patrol car. But the clearest voice was Billy Watson's, filled with a hope that broke my heart because I knew how this story ended. "You can hear us. Mom, Dad, the trooper can hear us. He's going to get us out." An adult male voice, presumably Billy's father, came on the line. "Officer, thank God. This is William Watson Sr. We're trapped in the main silo at the garrison elevator. The tornado passed about 4 hours ago, but the structure is severely damaged. We have 43 people here, including 7 children. Several are injured." I gripped the radio mic, knowing what I was about to do was insane, but unable to stop myself. "Mr. Watson, I need you to stay calm. Can you describe your exact situation? Any immediate dangers?" "The silo is listing about 15 degrees to the east. We can hear metal groaning constantly. The grain is unstable. We've already had 2 minor collapses that buried people up to their waists before we could dig them out." "Officer, we need rescue equipment, cutting tools. The main door is blocked by debris. Through my windshield, I stared at the empty wheat field where the garrison elevator had once stood. There was nothing there but darkness and grain stubble from the last harvest. Yet, on my radio, I was having a real-time conversation with people who had died when I was 6 years old. Mr. Watson, I need you to keep everyone calm and away from the walls. Move to the center of the silo if possible. We're trying, but the grain keeps shifting. Officer, what's your ETA with the rescue team?" How could I tell him that there was no rescue team? That there would never be a rescue team? That in approximately 8 hours the silo would collapse, crushing everyone inside? Another voice cut in. Nancy Garrett, the woman who'd mentioned her children. "Officer, my daughter Sarah, she's running a fever. She was hurt when we ran for shelter. Her arm might be broken. Please, is there a medical team coming?" I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of their hope pressing down on me. These weren't recordings or echoes. These were real people, somehow, experiencing their tragedy in real time, reaching across 4 decades for help that would never come. "Medical assistance is being arranged," I lied, hating myself for it. "Mrs. Garrett, can you immobilize Sarah's arm? Use belts, strips of cloth, anything rigid for a splint." Yes, we're doing that. "Thank you, Officer Kowalski. Trooper Dan Kowalski." There was a pause. Then William Watson, Sr. spoke again. "Kowalski?" But the trooper who responded to our first call was named Henderson. "Are you with him?" My blood went cold. In 1978, there had been a trooper, Jim Henderson, who'd worked this stretch of Highway 50. He'd been one of the first responders to the tornado, had spent 12 hours at the garrison site trying to coordinate rescue efforts. He'd retired in 1995 and died of a heart attack in 2003. Trooper Henderson is coordinating from another position, I managed. "I'm taking over direct communication." "Oh, thank God. We thought we'd lost contact. The radio has been cutting in and out." I looked at my dashboard clock. 2:47 a.m., May 27th, 2019. But for them, it was 2:47 a.m., May 30th, 1978. They were 8 hours from death, and somehow, impossibly, I was their only link to the outside world. A new voice came on, younger, maybe late teens. "Sir, my name is Marcus Powell. I'm up on the observation deck with 2 others. We can see lights in the distance. Are those the rescue vehicles?" I looked around. There were no lights except my own patrol car and the distant yard light of a farmhouse 3 miles away. "Marcus, describe what you're seeing." "Multiple vehicles, looks like. Wait, that's strange. They have these really bright blue and white lights, not like normal emergency lights. Almost like LED or something. LEDs. He was seeing modern emergency vehicles. But from when? Marcus, how many vehicles do you see?" "Hard to tell. 4, maybe 5. But sir, they're not moving. They're just sitting there on the highway. Why aren't they coming?" "Because they're not really there," I wanted to say. "Because you're seeing across time, looking at police cars that won't exist for decades, responding to calls that haven't been made yet, or have been made long ago, or are being made right now in 2019 while you're dying in 1978. My radio crackled with a new transmission, this time on my official police channel. "Unit 314, this is Unit 287. Dan, is that you out at the garrison site?" It was Michelle Sanders, the trooper Tom had mentioned, who'd responded to the signals back in 2015. She was working the night shift out of the Hutchinson station. I switched channels quickly. 287, this is 314. Yeah, I'm here. You monitoring the AM frequencies? I've been listening for the last hour. Dan, you shouldn't have responded to them. Why not? Because once you make contact, you become part of it. Check your dash clock. I looked. The clock read 2:47 a.m. I looked at my phone. It also read 2:47 a.m. I looked at my watch. 2:47 a.m. None of the time displays were advancing. Michelle, what's happening? You're partially synced with their timeline now. As long as you maintain radio contact, you exist in both 2019 and 1978 simultaneously. I made the same mistake 4 years ago. was trapped for what felt like days, but was only a few hours in real time. How do I get out? You have to break contact, turn off the radio, drive away, don't look back. But Dan, her voice grew heavy. Once you've heard them, really heard them, they never fully go away. I still hear them sometimes. In my dreams, during storms. They're always there, always dying, always calling for help. I switched back to AM 1240. Billy Watson was talking to someone, probably his mother. "The trooper is still here, Mom. See? His lights are still on. He won't leave us. How could I leave them now? How could I drive away knowing they could see me, that my presence gave them hope, even if it was false hope?" I keyed the mic. "Garrison elevator, this is Trooper Kowalski. I need to know, has anyone noticed anything unusual about time? Does anything seem off?" There was a confused murmuring. Then Nancy Garrett responded, "Officer, what do you mean? Although, now that you mention it, my watch stopped at 2:47. So did the wall clock. We assumed it was from the tornado's electromagnetic field. Mrs. Garrett, I need you to do something for me. Look outside. Tell me exactly what you see." I'm at one of the ventilation gaps. I can see, oh my God. Officer, this is going to sound crazy, but I can see the sun. It's bright daylight outside, but it was just nighttime a moment ago. How is that possible? They were seeing multiple timelines simultaneously. Just like they could see my 2019 patrol car, they could see different times of day, different years, all collapsed into a single, horrifying moment that lasted forever. William Watson Sr. came back on. "Officer Kowalski, something's wrong here. More wrong than just the tornado damage. People are flickering. I can see through them sometimes, and there are others here, people I don't recognize, wearing strange clothes. The 44th person, the new additions Tom had mentioned, people who'd gotten too close to the temporal anomaly and been pulled in. Mr. Watson, I need everyone to stay together. Don't interact with anyone you don't recognize from before the tornado." Before the tornado? Officer, that was only hours ago, wasn't it? Wait, what day is it? I could hear panic creeping into his voice. "Mr. Watson, stay calm. The tornado may have caused some temporal displacement. It's May 30th, early morning." "No, that can't be right. The tornado hit on May 29th evening. It's only been a few hours. Hasn't it? Oh God, how long have we been here?" The panic was spreading. I could hear people arguing, crying. Some insisting it had been hours, others saying days, some claiming they'd been there for years. The temporal anomaly was breaking down, their synchronized experience fracturing into individual timelines. Billy Watson's voice cut through the chaos, young and clear and terrified. "Trooper Kowalski, something's happening. I can see things that aren't there or weren't there. There's another silo next to ours, all modern and shiny, and another one that's already collapsed, and another that was never built. They're all here at the same time. Billy, listen to me. I need you to focus on my voice, only my voice. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Now, I need you to tell your dad something for me. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir." "Tell him that no matter what happens, no matter what he sees or hears, he needs to keep everyone together. Physical contact. Everyone holding hands or touching shoulders. It's the only way to keep you all in the same timeline." I heard Billy relay the message, heard William Watson Sr. organizing the survivors into a human chain. 43 people, holding on to each other in a grain silo that existed in 1978 and didn't exist in 2019, trapped in a moment that lasted forever and had already ended and hadn't happened yet. My radio crackled again. This time it was dispatch, but not my dispatch. The voice was older, more formal, using call signs from the 1970s. Unit 23, this is Greensburg Base. We have multiple units responding to your location. ETA 15 minutes. Hang in there, Henderson. They were receiving transmissions from their own time now. The original 1978 response that had arrived too late. I was hearing history unfold. The tragic 12 hours between the tornado and the collapse playing out in compressed time. Transmission. Modern dispatch codes. All units. We have a 1050 at mile marker 298. Single vehicle accident. Driver missing. Vehicle appears to have been stationary for several hours. That was my location. My patrol car. They were talking about me, but I was still here, still in my car. Wasn't I? I looked at my hands on the steering wheel. They were translucent, flickering like bad reception. I could see through them to the seat below. I was becoming unstable, caught between timelines. Trooper Kowalski? Billy Watson's voice again. You're fading. I can barely see your lights anymore. I looked out at the empty field, except it wasn't empty anymore. I could see the garrison elevator, translucent and wavering like a mirage, but definitely there. The massive concrete silos rose against the night sky, damaged and listing from the tornado. And I could see people inside, shadows moving behind the ventilation slats. 43 people who had died before I was old enough to understand death, looking out at me, waving, calling for help. And among them, standing near the entrance, was a figure in a Kansas State Trooper uniform. Not from 1978. The uniform was modern, like mine. The figure turned, and I saw Michelle Sanders' face. But Michelle was back in Hutchinson. I'd just talked to her on the radio, unless that had been 4 years ago. Unless she was still trapped here, part of her, the part that had made contact in 2015. I picked up my radio to call her, but a different voice answered. My own voice. Unit 314, be advised. Do not maintain contact. Break connection immediately. I was talking to myself. From when? From how many loops of this same moment? The dashboard clock still read 2:47 a.m. It had been 2:47 a.m. for what felt like hours. The trapped souls in the silo were experiencing their final night stretched into infinity, and anyone who tried to help them got pulled into the same temporal prison. William Watson Sr. was on the radio again. Officer Kowalski, we can hear the rescue vehicles. They're using some kind of cutting equipment on the debris. We're going to be okay, aren't we? I could hear it too. The sound of heavy equipment, rescue workers shouting coordinates, the organized chaos of an emergency response. But I knew from the historical records that the rescue team hadn't been able to breach the silo. They'd worked for 8 hours before the structure finally collapsed, taking everyone with it. Mr. Watson, you need to move everyone to the western wall, now. But that's where the damage is worst. Trust me. Western wall, everyone. Now. I heard him organizing the movement. Heard the scared voices of children, the groans of injured adults, the shuffling of feet through grain. I was trying to change history, to move them to the one section that had remained partially standing after the collapse. It was futile. History had already happened, but I had to try. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You can't change it. We've all tried. -MS Michelle Sanders. She was texting me from 2015, or from now, or from always. Another text, check your review mirror. I looked, my patrol car was full of people. Shadows of people. 43 tornado victims sitting in impossible spaces, existing in a vehicle that couldn't hold them all. Billy Watson was in the passenger seat looking at me with those young eyes. Are we dead, Trooper Kowalski? He asked, his voice coming from the radio and from right beside me simultaneously. I don't know, Billy. We've been here a really long time, haven't we? Longer than a night. Yeah, buddy. A really long time. But you came to help us. That means something, right? Even if we can't be saved, someone cared enough to try. The dashboard clock flickered. 2:47, 2:48, 6:47. The moment of collapse. I knew from the reports that the silo had fallen at 6:47 a.m., May 30th, 1978. The radio exploded with screams. Metal shrieking, grain roaring like an avalanche, people calling names of loved ones. And then, worst of all, silence. But the silence only lasted a moment. Then, Billy Watson's voice came back, young and hopeful. "Trooper? Trooper, can you hear me? I can see your car from up here. The blue lights. You're right outside. Please, we're up here. We're in the silo. Don't leave us." The loop had reset. They were back at the beginning of their 12-hour ordeal. But this time, I was part of it. I looked at my phone. 17 missed calls from dispatch. 53 unread texts. The timestamp on the most recent one was June 3rd, 2019. I'd been sitting here for a week, trapped in a single moment that lasted 12 hours and repeated endlessly. "This is Trooper Dan Kowalski," I said into the radio, not sure who I was talking to anymore. "I'm at the Garrison elevator site. I paused, not sure how to finish. Trapped? Lost in time? Part of the memorial now?" It was Tom Martinez, but his voice sounded older, tired. "We've been monitoring. It's been 10 days. Your car hasn't moved, but sometimes you're in it. Sometimes you're not. Sometimes there are two of you. Michelle says you're in the loop now. How do I get out? You don't? Not completely. Part of you will always be there now, in 1978, trying to save them. But you can pull most of yourself back. You have to accept that you can't save them. You have to let them go. They can hear me, Tom. They have hope because I'm here. And they'll have that hope forever. That's what the loop is. Their last night, playing out eternally, always ending the same way but always starting with hope. You've given them that. Someone who hears them, who validates that they existed, that they mattered. But if you don't pull back now, you'll be trapped forever." I looked at Billy Watson sitting beside me, translucent, flickering between existence and non-existence. "Will you remember me?" he asked. "Always," I promised. "Then it's okay." "We're okay. You can go." I turned off the AM radio. The voices stopped immediately. The shadows in my car vanished. The dashboard clock lurched forward, spinning through 10 days in seconds. My body solidified, became fully present in 2019 again. But I could still feel them. In the static between stations, in the wind through the wheat, in the groaning of distant grain silos. 43 souls, no, 44 now, because part of me would always be there, trapped in an eternal loop of hope and tragedy. The debriefing was held in a conference room at the Kansas Highway Patrol headquarters in Topeka, far from Highway 50, far from the Garrison site. But even 150 miles away, I could still hear them. Faint whispers in the air conditioning, Billy Watson's voice in the hum of fluorescent lights, Nancy Garrett's prayers in the distant thunder of an approaching storm. Captain Robert Hausman sat across from me, flanked by two people I didn't recognize. A woman in a severe black suit who introduced herself only as Dr. Chen, and a younger man who never gave his name at all. Between us on the table were my reports, witness statements, and a tablet displaying what looked like radar or atmospheric readings. "Trooper Kowalski," Captain Hausman began, his voice carefully neutral. "You were out of contact for 10 days. Your patrol car's GPS shows you never moved from mile marker 298, but your fuel gauge indicates you drove approximately 400 miles. Can you explain that? No, sir, I cannot. Dr. Chen leaned forward. According to your report, you made radio contact with victims of the 1978 Garrison elevator collapse. You claim to have had extended conversations with deceased individuals. That's correct. And you believe these were actual communications, not hallucinations or radio interference. I met her gaze steadily. Ma'am, I've been a trooper for over 2 decades. I know the difference between skip interference and interactive communication. Those people responded to my specific questions. They described things they couldn't have known in 1978. They saw my modern patrol vehicle. The unnamed man finally spoke, his voice carrying an accent I couldn't place. The grain silo. Tell us about its current condition. There is no silo. It was demolished after the collapse in 1978. Yet, you saw it. I saw something. A temporal echo, maybe. It appeared translucent, overlapping with the current wheat field. He made notes on his tablet, then showed me the screen. It was a satellite image of the Garrison site, but not a normal one. There were layers of color overlaid on the landscape, patterns that hurt to look at. This is a multispectral analysis from last Tuesday, when you were engaged with the phenomenon. Do you see these anomalies? I could see them, circular patterns where the silos had stood, but also where they hadn't stood, where they might stand, where they could never stand. Multiple timelines visible in a single image. What is this? I asked. Dr. Chen took over. Trooper Kowalski, what do you know about the May 29, 1978 tornado? F5, quarter-mile wide, winds over 300 miles per hour. Killed 17 people at the Garrison elevator when the silo collapsed the next morning. Those are the public facts. Here's what's classified. That tornado was unprecedented, not just in its intensity, but in its electromagnetic properties. It generated fields that shouldn't be possible in normal atmospheric conditions. The National Weather Service recorded phenomena they still can't explain. Temporal distortions, gravitational anomalies, radiation signatures that matched no known sources. The unnamed man added, "We believe the tornado created what physicists call a temporal thin point, a place where the barriers between different moments in time are weakened." You're telling me the government has known about this for 40 years? Captain Houseman shifted uncomfortably. Dan, there's a reason we have Directive 78-05. We've been monitoring and containing this situation since it happened. Usually, it's manageable. The signals stay confined to specific hours, specific frequencies. But lately, it's spreading, Dr. Chen finished. The temporal distortion is growing. More people are receiving the signals, and worse, some are being pulled in. In the last 5 years, 17 people have gone missing near grain silos across Kansas. All during storm seasons, all leaving behind vehicles with impossible mileage and radios tuned to dead frequencies. I thought of Michelle Sanders, of the part of her still trapped at the site. What about the officers who've made contact? How many? Including you. 7 over the years. 3 are dead, suicides, all of them. 2 are in psychiatric facilities. Michelle Sanders still works for us, but she's changed, and now you. What do you want from me? The unnamed man leaned forward. We want you to go back. I nearly knocked my chair over standing up. Absolutely not. Hear us out, Dr. Chen said quickly. We're not asking you to make contact again. We've developed equipment, shielding that might protect someone from the temporal effects. We need someone who's already been exposed, who can navigate the phenomenon, to place monitoring devices, to help us understand what's really happening. So you can contain it better? So we can save lives, Captain Houseman said. Dan, 3 nights ago, an entire family, parents and 3 kids stopped at a rest area near an abandoned silo in Rice County. All 5 of them heard the signals. The youngest, a 6-year-old girl, responded. She's been catatonic ever since, but sometimes she speaks in the voice of a man who died in a silo collapse in 1963. We need to understand this before it gets worse. I sat back down slowly. What makes you think your equipment will work? Dr. Chen pulled out a metallic briefcase, opening it to reveal what looked like a modified radio setup combined with some kind of field generator. We've been developing this since 2015, after the Sanders incident. It creates a localized temporal stabilization field. In theory, it should allow someone to observe the phenomenon without becoming entangled in it. In theory. It's been tested on minor temporal anomalies, the kind that make clocks run backward or create time loops in specific locations. But the Garrison site is the strongest anomaly we know of. We need someone with experience to test it there. I thought of Billy Watson's voice, of the 43 souls trapped in an eternal death loop, always hoping for rescue that would never come. Part of me was still there with them, would always be there. What exactly would I need to do? The unnamed man pulled out a map of Kansas, marked with red dots. Each dot was centered on a grain silo, and there were dozens of them. We've identified a pattern. Every grain silo in Kansas, built between 1920 and 1980, shows some level of temporal distortion. Minor in most cases, clocks losing a few seconds, radios picking up old farm reports, but 17 of them, all along Highway 50, show significant anomalies. The Garrison site is the worst, but it's not unique. You think they're connected? We know they are. The signals aren't random, they're synchronized. Every May 30th at 2:47 a.m., all 17 sites become active simultaneously. They're not just replaying their tragedies, they're communicating with each other. That made me sit up straight. The tornado victims are talking to each other. More than that, Dr. Chen said. We've decoded some of the transmissions. They're sharing information, describing things they see in their respective timelines, warning each other about people who get too close. And recently, they've been talking about something they call the opening. She played an audio file on her tablet. Through heavy static, I could hear voices, not just from 1978, but from different years, different incidents. A farmer from 1943 talking to a mill worker from 1961. A child from 1955 speaking with a truck driver from 1972. All of them dead. All of them trapped in their respective silos, and all of them discussing something that was coming. The barriers are weakening, one voice said. I can see more timelines now, dozens of them, said another. The storm is coming again. The big one. The one that opens everything. And then, clear as day, Billy Watson's voice. Trooper Kowalski will help us. He promised. I felt cold. When did you record this? 3 hours ago, while you were driving here. Billy Watson has been calling for you continuously since you broke contact. He seems to believe you're going to do something important. What kind of something? The unnamed man spoke carefully. We believe the victims aren't just randomly trapped. They're being held in place by something, used as anchors for a larger phenomenon. The 1978 tornado wasn't natural. It was the result of someone or something trying to create a massive temporal rift. It partially succeeded, creating these thin points. And now, 45 years later, conditions are aligning for another attempt. You're talking about someone deliberately causing this? Dr. Chen pulled out another file, this one much older, yellowed with age. Have you ever heard of the Zenith Fellowship? No. a cult that operated in Kansas from the 1920s to the late 1970s. They believed that grain silos were towers to heaven, that their geometric perfection and height made them ideal for ascending to higher dimensions. They conducted rituals at silos across the state. She showed me photographs. Groups of people in robes standing around grain silos, symbols painted on the concrete, ceremonies conducted during storms. Their leader, a man named Jeremiah Whitmore, claimed he could unlock the doors of time using a combination of electromagnetic manipulation and human sacrifice. He disappeared on May 29, 1978, the day of the tornado. We believe he caused the tornado, or at least influenced it. The 17 anomalous silos all have one thing in common. The Zenith Fellowship conducted major rituals at each one. The trapped souls aren't random victims. They were chosen, positioned, turned into metaphysical anchors for something bigger. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Topeka skyline. Even here, I could see grain silos in the distance, standing like sentinels against the sky. How many of them were prisons? How many held souls trapped between moments? You think Whitmore is still alive? We think he's like the victims, neither alive nor dead, existing in the spaces between time. And we think he's preparing for something. The atmospheric conditions this summer are almost identical to 1978. Solar activity, electromagnetic fields, pressure systems, everything is aligning. For what? The unnamed man answered, his voice grave. To complete what he started. To fully open the temporal rift. To create a permanent bridge between all possible timelines. Imagine every moment that ever was or ever could be happening simultaneously. Past, present, future, and every variation of each, all colliding in one place. That would be chaos. That would be the end of linear time as we know it. And it starts at the garrison site, because that's where the rift is strongest. That's where the most souls are trapped. That's where the veil is thinnest. Captain Houseman leaned forward. Dan, we need you to go back, with the equipment. Place monitoring devices at specific coordinates. Help us understand the exact mechanics of what's happening. And maybe, just maybe, find a way to stop it. I turned from the window. When? Tomorrow night, May 30th, the anniversary. When the signals are strongest and the rift is most visible. That's also when it's most dangerous. Yes, Dr. Chen admitted, but it's also when we might be able to see Whitmore, if he exists in the state we think he does. The anniversary is when all timelines converge on that moment. If he's going to make his move, it'll be then. I thought about it. Thought about Billy Watson waiting for me. Thought about 43 souls. More across all the silos, trapped in eternal loops of death. Thought about a 6-year-old girl speaking in the voice of a dead man. I'll do it. But I have conditions. Name them. Michelle Sanders comes with me. She's been in the loop. She understands it. Tom Martinez, too. He's studied this longer than anyone. And I want a direct line to you throughout the operation. If things go wrong, if the equipment fails, I want an extraction plan. Captain Houseman nodded. Done. Dr. Chen and her team will provide technical support. We'll have units stationed outside the affected area, ready to respond. One more thing, I said. If we encounter Whitmore, if he's really orchestrating this, what's our response? The unnamed man smiled grimly. Trooper Kowalski, how do you arrest someone who exists outside of time? It was a good question. Tomorrow night, we'd find out if there was an answer. That evening, I drove back to my apartment in Hutchinson, but I didn't go inside immediately. Instead, I sat in my car, turned on the AM radio and slowly tuned to 1240. Static at first, then faintly, "Trooper Kowalski? Are you there? It's Billy. The others say you're coming back. They say tomorrow is important." The old man in the shadows, he's excited about something. He keeps saying, "The door opens tomorrow." "Trooper, I'm scared. We're all scared. But you're coming back, right? You promised you'd remember us." "I remember, Billy," I said to the empty air. "I'm coming back. This time, maybe I can do more than just listen." The radio crackled, and for just a moment, I could swear I heard him say, "Be careful. The old man in the shadows knows you're coming too." Jeremiah Whitmore. After 45 years, still pulling strings from between moments, still orchestrating his grand design. Tomorrow night, on the anniversary of his greatest success and failure, we'd meet him in the spaces between time. I turned off the radio and went inside to prepare. Tomorrow, I would return to the garrison site. Tomorrow, I would enter the temporal rift deliberately, armed with science instead of just good intentions. Tomorrow, I would face whatever Jeremiah Whitmore had become. And maybe, just maybe, I could free the souls he'd trapped in his towers to heaven. May 30th, 2019, 11:47 p.m. We assembled at a staging area 5 miles from the garrison site. Myself, Michelle Sanders, Tom Martinez, Dr. Chen, and a technical team of 3 specialists who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. The air was thick with humidity and that electric feeling that comes before a major storm. Lightning flickered on the horizon, and the Weather Service had already issued tornado watches for 6 counties. Michelle looked older than her years, her hair prematurely gray, eyes that had seen too much. When she shook my hand, I felt a jolt. Not electricity, but something else. Recognition. The part of me still trapped in 1978 recognizing the part of her trapped in 2015. "You can feel them already, can't you?" she asked quietly. "Every second. They're louder tonight. Anniversary night is always the worst. All the timelines converge. Past, present, future. They all bleed together. Last year, I saw myself die 3 different ways." Tom Martinez was checking equipment, his movements efficient but nervous. "The electromagnetic readings are off the charts," he reported. "Whatever's happening, it started about an hour ago. All 17 sites are showing synchronized activity." Dr. Chen fitted me with the temporal stabilization device, a vest-like apparatus connected to a modified radio system and what looked like a small particle accelerator. "This should maintain your temporal coherence," she explained. "Keep you anchored in 2019 while allowing you to perceive other timelines. In theory." You keep saying "in theory," because we've never tested it against an anomaly this strong. If it fails, you could be scattered across multiple timelines simultaneously. You'd exist in all of them and none of them. Comforting. The unnamed man from the briefing appeared on a tablet screen. He was monitoring from some remote location. "We're tracking atmospheric conditions identical to May 29, 1978. If Whitmore is going to make his move, it'll be soon. Get in position." We drove in convoy toward the garrison site. As we got closer, our electronics started malfunctioning. Radio stations bled together. Decades of farm reports and emergency broadcasts playing simultaneously. My dashboard clock spun wildly through years, decades, centuries. The GPS showed us driving through locations that didn't exist. Towns that had been destroyed. Roads that had never been built. Highways that might someday be. At exactly midnight, we reached mile marker 298. The wheat field, where the garrison elevator had once stood, was no longer empty. 17 grain silos stood in a perfect circle, each one from a different era. all existing simultaneously. Some were pristine, newly built. Others were crumbling ruins. The central silo, the one where 43 people had died, flickered between states, standing, falling, collapsed, rebuilt, never built at all. Jesus Christ, Tom whispered. It's all of them. Every silo from every timeline. Lightning crashed, but it didn't disappear. It hung in the air, frozen ribbons of electricity connecting the silos like a web. Through the stabilization device, I could see clearly what was happening. Time itself was cracking, breaking down, all possibilities existing at once. Movement, Michelle said, pointing. There. Figures were emerging from the silos. Not walking, manifesting. The trapped souls from across 45 years of incidents. Farmers from the 1940s, workers from the 1960s, the 43 from 1978. They stood in a circle, transparent, flickering between existence and void. And in the center, finely visible, was Jeremiah Whitmore. He wasn't human anymore. Hadn't been for 45 years. He existed as a convergence point, a place where all timelines met. Sometimes he looked like an old man in 1920s clothing. Sometimes he was young, powerful, radiating energy. Sometimes he wasn't human at all, but a geometric impossibility that hurt to perceive. Trooper Kowalski. His voice came from everywhere and nowhere. I've been waiting for you. Billy said you'd come. I stepped forward, the stabilization device humming against my chest. Whitmore. You need to stop this. Stop? I'm about to complete my life's work. 45 years of preparation, of gathering souls, of weakening the barriers. Tonight, the door opens fully. Time itself will be liberated from its linear prison. You're destroying reality. I'm expanding it. Imagine experiencing every moment of existence simultaneously. Every choice, every possibility, every timeline accessible. That's true immortality. Dr. Chen's voice crackled through my earpiece. Dan, we're reading massive temporal distortions. He's pulling energy from all 17 sites. If he succeeds in opening a full rift. I know. I walked closer to the circle of silos. The trapped souls watched me, their eyes pleading. Among them, I saw Billy Watson, still 9 years old, still hoping for rescue. These people didn't volunteer for your experiment, I said to Whitmore. They were chosen. Their deaths, at precise moments, in precise locations, created the anchor points I needed. Every grain silo is a tower to heaven, officer. Every death in one is a sacrifice to break the chains of time. That's murder. That's ascension. The lightning web between the silos began to pulse faster. The air itself was vibrating, reality starting to tear. Through the rifts, I could see other Kansases, one where the tornado never happened, one where it happened every day, one where the entire state was nothing but grain silos stretching to infinity. Dan, Michelle said urgently, moving up beside me, we have to disrupt the pattern. The souls, they're not willing participants, but they're powering this. If we can free them. How? She pulled out her service weapon. Sometimes the simplest solutions work. The silos are focal points. Destroy them, break the circuit. Those silos exist in multiple timelines simultaneously. Bullets won't work. No, Tom said, understanding. But the stabilization device might. It forces things into a single timeline. If you can touch each silo while wearing it, it would force them to choose a single state of existence. Dr. Chen confirmed over the radio. Either fully here or fully gone. Either way, it breaks Whitmore's pattern. Whitmore heard everything, of course. Existing in all times meant he knew our plan before we made it. "You can try," he said, amused. "But the moment you touch those silos, you'll be pulled into their timelines. The device can't protect you from direct contact with that much temporal distortion." He was right. I knew it, felt it. The stabilization device was barely keeping me coherent as it was. Direct contact with the silos would shatter me across time. Unless... "Billy," I called out. "You can hear me, right?" The boy's spirit nodded, stepping forward from the circle of souls. "You're all trapped, but you're also connected. To each other, to the silos, to Whitmore. He's using you, but that connection goes both ways, doesn't it?" Billy tilted his head, understanding dawning in his ghostly eyes. "We're part of the pattern. We can change it from inside." "No!" Whitmore roared, his form solidifying into something monstrous. "You cannot!" "I control the pattern. I am the pattern." "You were," I said, "but you made a mistake. You trapped souls at the moment of their greatest hope, when they thought rescue was coming. That hope, that human determination to survive, that's stronger than your control." I turned to all the trapped souls. "You've been calling for help for decades, broadcasting your fear, your pain, your hope. But you're also broadcasting to each other. You're connected. All of you, across all the silos, across all the years, you have the power to end this." Nancy Garrett stepped forward. "We're already dead. What more can he do to us? Keep you trapped forever, or you can choose to let go, to break the pattern from within, to finally rest." The souls began to move, not physically, but temporally. They were vibrating between timelines, using their connection to destabilize the entire network. The silos flickered more rapidly, their multiple states becoming chaotic. Whitmore screamed, a sound that existed in every moment simultaneously. He reached out with tendrils of temporal energy, trying to reassert control. That's when Michelle and I acted. She went left, I went right. We didn't touch the silos, we didn't need to. We touched the souls. Michelle reached for a farmer from 1943. I reached for Billy Watson. The stabilization device screamed in protest but held. The moment my hand made contact with Billy's spectral form, I experienced his entire existence. 9 years of life, 12 hours of fear, 45 years of being trapped. But I also gave him something, a single, stable moment in 2019. An anchor to now. "Now!" I shouted to all of them. "Choose now! Choose to be here in this moment, or choose to let go. But choose." One by one, the souls made their choice. Most chose to let go, to finally embrace the death that had been delayed for so long. They dissolved into light, peaceful at last. But some, like Billy, chose to stay, to exist in 2019, to have a second chance at the life that had been stolen. The pattern shattered. The silos collapsed through themselves, each one settling into a single timeline. Most chose never to have existed, vanishing into wheat fields. The Garrison elevator chose its true state, ruins, a memorial to the 43 who died. Whitmore's form began to unravel. Without the trapped souls powering his network, without the pattern to sustain him, he couldn't maintain his existence across multiple timelines. "You don't know what you've done," he raged. "I was so close." The door was opening. "The door was never meant to open," I said. "Time moves forward for a reason. The past is memory, the future is possibility, but the present is where we live." He made one last desperate attempt, reaching for the remaining souls, trying to pull them back into his pattern. But Billy Watson stood between us and Whitmore, no longer a scared 9-year-old, but something more. A guardian of the threshold, powered by 45 years of accumulated hope. "No more," Billy said simply. We're free now. Whitmore imploded, pulled into himself, compressed into a single point of existence that couldn't sustain itself. He vanished with a sound like thunder played backward, leaving only a smell of ozone and old grain. The storm broke. Real rain, real lightning, real wind. Not temporal distortions, but actual weather. The 17 sites across Highway 50 went quiet simultaneously. The signals stopped. The loops ended. The trapped souls were free. But not all of them were gone. As we stood in the rain, the stabilization device finally giving out in a shower of sparks, I saw them, maybe a dozen souls who had chosen to stay, to exist in our timeline. They were solid now, real, though obviously displaced in time. Billy Watson stood before me, actually solid, actually breathing. "Am I alive?" he asked, wonder in his voice. "I don't know," I admitted. "But you're here. You're now." Dr. Chen's team swarmed the site, taking readings, documenting everything. The unnamed man appeared in person for the first time, examining the souls who had chosen to stay. There would be complications. People legally dead for decades suddenly existing. Children who should be middle-aged still children. The temporal paradoxes alone would take years to sort out. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, the signals had stopped. The loops were broken. The grain silos of Kansas were just grain silos again. Michelle stood beside me as we watched the sun rise over the prairie. "You know it's not over, right?" Whitmore was just one cult leader, one attempt. There are other thin places, other trapped souls. I know. So, what do we do? I thought about it, then smiled. We listen. We respond. We help when we can. It's what cops do. Tom Martinez joined us, looking exhausted but satisfied. The readings are clean. All 17 sites showing normal temporal flow. Whatever Whitmore built, it's completely collapsed. In the distance, I could see Billy Watson talking to Dr. Chen's team, his existence a miracle and a paradox. Other freed souls were being processed, documented, prepared for a world that had moved on without them. It would be complicated, messy, probably impossible to fully resolve. But they were free. After decades of calling for help, someone had finally answered. My radio crackled to life one last time, but instead of emergency signals from 1978, it was current dispatch. "All units, be advised. Storm system has passed. Highway 50 is clear. Normal patrol routes resume." Normal. As if anything would ever be normal again after you'd heard the voices of the dead, traveled through time, and fought a cult leader who existed in multiple timelines simultaneously. But that was the job. Patrol the lonely roads. Protect and serve. Answer when someone calls for help, even if they're calling from 45 years ago. I got in my patrol car, now functioning normally, all its clocks showing the correct time. As I drove away from the garrison site, I turned on the AM radio. Static on 1240, nothing but dead air. For the first time in 45 years, the grain silo signals were silent. And somewhere in that silence I could swear I heard Billy Watson say, "Thank you."